Today we're pleased to welcome two speakers to our podium. Tania Ibarra is the co-founder of Step Up Equity Matters. She is a certified public accountant in the state of Wisconsin and also a certified Lean Six Sigma Green Belt. With this background, her strengths lie in connecting process with financial and operational results while consistently seeking efficiencies via manual procedures automation. Tania believes in powerful environments where people can contribute their talents, knowledge, and skills freely. Jeannine Bindl is an advisor, facilitator, and project manager with Step Up for Equity Matters. She is a registered dietitian, and she has experience across public health, healthcare, cooperative, and consulting industries. She believes in developing systems and processes that honor and enable people to leverage their strengths, experiences, and abilities. Tania and Jeannine are going to share Step Up Equity Matters' journey as a startup in Madison and the lessons learned for sustainable progress and organizational change. We look forward to your presentation today, and as a way of thanking you for being here today, we're making a donation to the Rotary International Polio Plus Fund. Let's welcome them. We will have Q&A also.
All right. Hello. Today I stand before you as a co-founder of our company and as a witness of transformative journeys towards a more equitable workplace and community. Let me make sure I get this right. This journey began in 2014 when Dane County was responding to a significant racial and economic disparities exposed by the Race to Equity report. During this time, the business and community leaders were looking for ways to address the racial and economic disparities. As a member of the business community, I wanted to be part of the solution and inspire workplaces to really do the work. Thus, we gathered business leaders and asked them what they needed to become better employers for Black people. Through this effort, we learned how business leaders felt about the topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And as we analyzed the responses provided during this session, the following themes emerged. Business leaders lack the confidence, comfort, and skills to engage in discussions about D&I. Business leaders often see D&I as a problem too big to solve. And business leaders do not see D&I at the same level of urgency as other business problems. Subsequently, Step Up began to provide the business community in Dane County with knowledge and community to keep practicing and building our confidence and skills to engage in deeper and more meaningful conversations about D&I. Dane County needs for our services grew organically and put me and my co-founders in the position to decide whether we pursue this change-making business full-time. Effective 2019, we moved from part-time, volunteer-based organization to our first full-time employee. Early on, Step Up identified that our emotional responses to D&I matters can hinder our ability to move forward. Thus, to strengthen our efforts, we added emotional intelligence as a core part of the work we do. We include emotional intelligence in all our products. In parallel with this D&I business, I also led an organization that provided consulting service to BIPAC leaders that were leading nonprofits here in Madison, such as the Foundation for Black Women's Wellness, and nationally engaged public media. As the business grew and the services overlap, earlier this year we merged these two organizations into one. Oops. And today, Step Up Equity Matters is a majority-owned women of color business, operated nationally, and we also are serving a national footprint. We engineer change we want to see and partner with organizations that seek to imagine a more equitable world. We believe in an equitable world where our outcomes aren't predicted by our identity. This kind of change requires a sound and sustainable process. Our D&I work is a change management process that begins understanding the current state. This baselining is incredibly important to ensure that we can align on where we're at individually and collectively so that we can have realistic expectations on how fast we can move and how much effort it's going to take. Many organizations made promises after the murder of George Floyd. 3 years later, we see that those who didn't understand where they were in their journey have not delivered and are struggling to remain committed to the D&I efforts that they promised. The next stage in our change management practice is to develop a collective plan of action. These must include key functions within the organization, operations, research and development, logistics, not just human resources. Our change management practices relies on buy-in from the leadership team at each organization. We won't take clients whose CEO is not the executive sponsor of the D&I effort. That's one of our conditions. Once we have plan, we work the plan. This stage is particularly challenging for most organizations. It is at the implementation stage that our commitment to the change gets tested. We are seeing this across the D&I industry. Real commitment is challenging to sustain, and many are cutting back on their D&I efforts that they promised 3 years ago. Meaningful change takes a multi-year commitment. In 2020, after George Floyd, we received a flood of inquiries about our services. We sent out 55 proposals in 1 month that included a 3-year plan with real costs of doing the work that creates the impact that we seek. Of the 55 organizations, less than 5 committed to the 3-year plan. Most were looking for one-off, check-the-box training. This was evidence to us that most D&I statements in the wake of George Floyd murder will not be followed with real action that delivers the change. You're likely wondering why 3 years. According to change management practices, the first couple of steps in organization culture change journey takes months. The last couple take years. Why? The initial excitement about change wears off, and we have to work harder to generate excitement and ownership to keep the change on the right path. Additionally, cultural change is not linear. On an average, it takes about 3 to 5 years to create positive and sustainable change in an organization. Businesses know how to do change. We see it all the time, from transitioning to new systems to becoming a new company through mergers and acquisitions. Business leaders are capable of adapting and changing to achieve the desired outcomes. The challenge we have is that most business leaders do not recognize D&I as a business problem with a business solution. The goal of the step-up approach was to create shared language and repeatable framework that helps increase business leader skills. We needed to be simple and supported by leading research. Our approach also needed to support the individual and the organizational level behaviors changing process. Thus, the step-up approach was born. Recognize, own, disrupt. Recognize how individual and systemic biases create inequities in our society, and then own our biases with compassion for ourselves, and especially those affected by them, and disrupt unhelpful biases to foster inclusivity and equity. This is the action piece. We say this approach is simple. It's never easy, and it's never linear. Many people and organizations want to jump to disrupt. What can we do? But first, we need to step back and look inward to understand what's really causing these inequities. This inward-looking approach is important to help find their own incentive to be part of the solution. For example, you may be wondering why a successful finance finance professional will leave a promising career to pursue this change work? I always get. The answer is my 2 daughters. My career, I've done this so many times. My career experience as the only youngest female and woman of color at all levels I achieved gave me the uncompromising and relentless desire to want a different experience for my daughters. I see it as my duty to push our workplaces forward, to clear them of all the negative, discriminatory experiences women, and particularly women of color, face daily as we seek to make a living wage to support our families. The last step in the step-up approach is disrupt. And without recognition and ownership, well-meaning initiatives can lead to one-time fixes that cause more harm than good, like Dr. Brewer said a couple weeks ago when I was here. So Jeannine is going to take over, thankfully, just at the right time.
Hi, everyone. All right, so let's take a deeper look. Why do we start the step-up approach with recognize? Because while not everything that is faced can be changed, nothing can be changed if it is not faced. When we say recognize, we're talking about building skills to recognize patterns in our behaviors, both individual and collective, that create inequitable outcomes for groups and segments of our workforces. This first step can be hard to engage because most of us don't want to inflict harm for others, and most of us really, really value fairness. Most of us consciously desire a just society. However, behavioral economics literature suggests that 90% of the decisions that are made are subconscious and driven by our subconscious brains. The other 10% are done using conscious thought. In this level of unconscious decision-making, it is this level of unconscious decision-making that continues to perpetuate inequitable outcomes. And recognizing how biases create inequities is about looking under the surface because we simply cannot solve the problems that we can't see. In this first step, we work with organizations, individuals, to recognize the patterns of biases in favor of something or against. With a show of hands, I'm wondering from the room, because I am going to ask you to participate just a little bit, whom amongst the group experiences positive emotions when you hear the word bias? So this might look like curiosity, excitement, or courage. When I say the word bias, do you feel courage or excitement? Show of hands. All right. What about negative emotions or resistant emotions? These might look like fear, frustration, or judgment. You see a show of hands? Yeah, that word brings a lot of emotions for us, right? And that's pretty normal. We see a much higher response rate when we say the word bias, that people have a negative emotion. So we have a bias against biases. And that's why we developed the Uprooting Bias Online Challenge. Because in order to have these really deep conversations, we need to look at this cognitive process that's happening about the word bias, and we need to identify it and disrupt it. We need to move past it, right? Because that's where we start to have those rich, deep conversations about how biases create inequitable outcomes on the basis of identity. The more work we do or did on recognizing those biases with clients, the more we saw emotions come up. And that brings us to the second step in the step-up approach, which is own. Like Dr. Brower said in his presentation a few weeks ago, awareness-building DEI campaigns are not enough, and in fact do not change behaviors much. We realize that we need to support individuals and organizations through the emotions of change. If you've ever gone through a major life transition, you've experienced the emotional roller coaster that comes along with it, right? During the own stage of our approach, we work with participants to understand their emotions and choose how they wish to move forward and leverage their intrinsic motivation as well. And this allows them to own their role and activates their desire to change themselves as well as to inspire others for change. And this is often a continuous process. Like we said, it's not linear. One day, we're oftentimes celebrating that we made a change in a PTO policy, for example, and the next day we can be stewing in disbelief because something happened. And this is why emotional intelligence is centered in our work. David Caruso from the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence said, "It's important to understand that emotional intelligence is not the opposite of intelligence. It is not the triumph of the head over the heart. It is the unique intersection of both." I like to think of that as a Venn diagram. We humans are driven by emotions, and activating the emotions that drive the results we seek is key to successful DEI efforts. Advancing DEI requires us to acknowledge, accept, and leverage the emotions involved in the process. There's no way around these emotions. We have to move through them. And then we get to our last step in the step-up approach. So once we've moved through the emotions, we can confidently move into action because we have both cognitively and emotionally accepted and begun to understand what is going on. And we feel capable and inspired to do the change. Right? One of those primary themes that Tania mentioned at the beginning, DEI is too big to solve. We get down. We can get more granular and better understand the problem that we're trying to solve when we have the cognitive understanding and the emotional understanding. So this is where we as DEI practitioners see the fruits of all the hard work that we've done. We see our participants and our clients start to ask different questions. They now merge their knowledge about their particular job and organization and create action plans and address the problem and devise a new outcome. To illustrate the impact of our approach, we have selected a client example to share with you. Artful Home engaged Step Up in 2021 to support their journey to embed DEI concepts into their business. After a year of foundation setting, learning to recognize, own, and disrupt, they set the vision that Artful Home will celebrate and represent the true diversity of American culture in all its artful expressions. They set the vision, to this end, they have worked to upskill their staff on identifying cultural appropriation in their art and improved access for new artists by intentionally seeking out underrepresented artists and streamlining the onboarding process to remove unnecessary barriers. Next slide. In the recognition stage, Artful Home identified that the majority of its artist vendors were white, cisgender, and centric. As they looked through their product offering, they also identified there were products that were Indigenous inspired. This started an internal discussion with a cross-functional team, including marketing, customer support, and artist recruitment. It highlighted many areas of work, but one that was very important was awareness building on cultural appropriation. In addition to the awareness building campaign, the artist recruitment process was evaluated, and many changes were made. Additionally, the marketing team evaluated their approach to selecting featured artists to make sure that they were promoting products of all artists equitably and not only influenced by the team preferences for artists. Not quite. This is a real impact on underrepresented artists because it translates to real economic impact. Artists that perhaps did not previously have access to the opportunity to reach the Artful Home audience only due to the unconscious bias in favor of white-centric artful expression now have the opportunity to sell their art through this channel. And further, artists that fall into a cultural appropriation category wouldn't continue to be part of the Artful Home ecosystem. By approaching DEI as a business problem with a change management solution, we are able to integrate, next slide. We're able to integrate DEI concepts into how work gets done, thereby building capacity within organizations to have a unique and resounding impact beyond what we as consultants would be capable of. In our work advising organizations through their DEI journey, we focus on solutions that can be embedded into the existing infrastructure. And today we're going to talk to you about 3 of those solutions that have been key for our clients as they pursue change within their organizations. As Dr. Brower mentioned a couple of weeks ago, you can tell that we resonated strongly with his talk. It was really nice to be here. One-time trainings can actually move us backwards. We need to be strategic, make a plan, create a vision, and get everyone on board to see it through. In our experience, effective DEI change management strategies have continuous learning through all levels of the organization, open feedback within teams and across levels of the organization, and inclusive growth, growth of opportunity, growth of representation, of identity, and growth of the business. Continuous learning supports organizations' change journey when it is embedded into the way work gets done instead of as an added task. And those leading practices have informed our integration of continuous learning. The 3 areas of continuous learning that we have seen be most impactful are leadership training, learning how to apply DEI to all functions of our organization, and embedding within the current employee learning opportunities. So that first one, leadership opportunity. The top-down approach of leadership training is very, very potent. When leaders are equipped with DEI knowledge, their decisions, actions, communications inherently support and promote continuous learning. According to McKinsey, senior leadership's commitment and accountability are necessary for successful DEI initiatives. We are not going to go very far without leadership commitment. Our second solution or piece within the continuous learning is applying DEI concepts to all functions. So teams are solving problems all the time. New problems, different problems. We have global pandemics, and there are really big new problems, right? So we're solving different problems all of the time. And we encourage and advise teams to meditate on how their work reflects and impacts various communities, whether it's through your marketing campaign, a product design, the insurance products you offer, or customer support. Every single role has a DEI component. And finally, employee learning opportunities. We encourage organizations to embed new perspectives into their regular meetings and opportunities for enlightenment. Be intentional about speakers, workshops, and resources that integrate the nuances of leading practices. So for example, in preparing for the annual performance evaluation, we are working with a client to embed consideration of how unconscious biases can inequitably affect the way we see performance across our team members. This is not a DEI training. It is performance evaluation training with an equity lens. Often the most significant obstacles to DEI change work have been deep-seated beliefs that we carry. Challenging these obstacles requires a lot of patience and a lot of persistence. The second solution we have to offer today is open feedback. I'm sorry, I don't feel like I can look at this side of the room because of the mic, so I'm not. We found that the most sustainable changes were those that had buy-in from all levels of the organization, from the C-suite to entry-level employees. Creating safe spaces for dialogue ensured that DEI isn't just a top-down approach, but something that everyone can participate in and is a company-wide movement. The age-old saying that communication is key rings really true here. For DEI practices to be sustainable, they must be dynamic, adapting, and evolving based on the real-time experiences and insights. And these insights come from the very people who form the backbone of our organizations, the employees. So open feedback is essential, but for many reasons, but we're going to share 3 today. Those are listed on the screen. Open feedback ensures that all voices, especially those that are traditionally marginalized or suppressed, are heard. It's a step towards genuine inclusivity. A timely course correction. Rather than wait for annual surveys, open feedback mechanisms help identify and address DEI concerns as they arise, promoting a proactive approach. And then reinforcing of our desired culture. Regular feedback normalizes DEI conversations, transforming them from a special initiative to just an inherent organization discussion. Open feedback isn't merely a tool, it's a philosophy. It signals to your workforce that their experiences, insights, and perspectives are vital and they're valued. At Step Up, we believe that prioritizing open feedback isn't just about addressing challenges, it's about embracing opportunities. Our final solution to offer today is inclusive growth. And at the heart of every organization's DEI journey is a quest for meaningful and sustainable change. But what if we told you that DEI is not just about checking boxes or fulfilling quotas, but that the growth and sustainability of your organization is intricately linked to how inclusive your growth strategy is? Inclusive growth is not just a DEI practice, it's a business imperative. It's about ensuring that as your company grows, so do the opportunities, representation, and voices of all of your stakeholders. It's about understanding that every individual in your organization, irrespective of their background, gender, race, or belief, plays a critical role in shaping the future of your organization. How can organizations seamlessly embed inclusive growth into everyday practices? Through mentorship. Building mentorship programs that ensure every employee, especially those from underrepresented backgrounds, have equal access to growth and advancement opportunities. Looking at our hiring and promoting practices. Are they truly equitable? Are they providing opportunities for diverse talent to enter and rise within your organization? It's not uncommon to see companies prioritizing hiring from underrepresented identities, and this can lead to a concentration of underrepresented identities in entry-level positions who are then unable to climb the ranks through the organization because of historic promoting strategies being tied to old biases and beliefs. And this last way is to value diversity, to recognize and embrace the diverse cultures and beliefs and backgrounds of your employees. We all feel great when we feel appreciated, right? When employees feel valued and seen, they become active participants of your organization's growth. And so we ask you to consider, is your organization merely growing, or is it growing inclusively? Are the voices contributing to its success, or are some left in the shadows? The sustainable solutions for change in DEI that we have chosen to share with you today have had a profound impact right here in our community. And so as you think about embedding DEI concepts into your own sphere of influence, and by sphere of influence we mean your organization, your teams, the relationships that you have, which of the solutions we shared today feels most accessible? What feels possible to you? Rotary as an organization has prioritized learning both in the speakers that are invited as well as at the leadership level. And you are amongst the Rotary chapters. You are amongst the leaders of Rotary clubs. How else can learning be prioritized in this area? Are there ways to promote understanding of DEI concepts through the organization such that it shapes the questions you ask and the way your work gets done? Are there opportunities to embrace and cultivate a culture of open feedback as this Rotary Club seeks to meet the needs of the diverse Rotarians that are part of membership? What opportunities exist to embed open feedback and continue to cultivate a culture where Rotarians of all identities can connect, grow, and serve? And how can you lean in to support your inclusive growth? Are there internal practices that can be amplified to include additional voices? So in promoting these solutions with our clients over the past 9 years, we have come away with a few lessons about how to sustain the progress that we have made.
Right. So some of the lessons is value of listening. I think thinking back to 2013, 2014, when the community was on a roadshow of the equity report, I think that one of the things that I came away from it is that too often we are talking at each other, not listening to each other. And this is true in those community conversations, but it's also true when we are trying to advance equity within an organization. So we really, with the emotional intelligence, we challenge the leaders and everybody really to listen to each other and understand everybody's perspective as we move forward. And that allows us to come together to pursue the change that we want to see together. The challenge of our learning. So I think, sometimes it feels easier to teach somebody something new than to ask them to not do the thing that they learned to do. And so that is true for all of us. I will raise my hand, and my team is always supporting me on this, but I do have a very hard time when we have changes of pronouns. When I have known somebody for a very long time and then I have to relearn a new way of referring to the person that I knew into their new pronoun, it's really hard for my brain to rewire itself to see the person and remember that the person has a new pronoun. So, but it takes practice, and so when I was learning English, I had taped my entire house with vocabulary. My mom was going crazy. So one thing that helps, and this is really helpful in the virtual world, is when people put their pronouns in their profiles, you are able to check yourself, and I'm always paying attention to those. So just, find the tools that help you unlearn what you did before in order to do the new thing. So it's really hard. And in that process, we must show grace to each other, because when we start shaming people for the mistake, we put people in a position of being against the change than for the change. And I'm not justifying the behavior, but I do know that in order to do this change, we must recognize that unlearning is a very, very, very hard thing to do. Oops, I went the wrong way. The power of collaboration. In the beginning, I always believed, because I work with some incredible business leaders and I saw amazing problems solved, and yet D&I felt like unattainable problem to solve. And one of the things that I have learned with our clients is that when we can really put together our advising skills and what we have learned, and they can comprehend, bring together their knowledge of the organization and their business, just like the Artful Home example, we would have never come up with all the things that they came up with to change. But it was the collaboration with them, with their entire team, that they put together to address these issues with the artist recruitment and art appropriation, that I'm just amazed about the power of bringing together the minds. And so don't go alone. I will never do this work without my co-founders. It will be too much to do. I wouldn't have a release, a reliever for when this work gets very personal and very emotional at times. So find your people in this work. Sometimes we are those people when our clients become when we become the resource, but also find your people. One of the things that we learn from the questions we ask people is, what do you need in order to continue to make the progress? And the number one thing, peer support. So I think that's something very important to remember, that in order to continue on the change, you have to have your people that are committed to it. We cannot do this in isolation. And then I will be remiss if I don't share my gratitude for all the people that are in this room since we began, and since before we began. I think I was just thinking about the first time I came to Rotary, and Juan Jose came to mind. And so, sorry. I didn't think all of that was going to come through, but we all miss Juan Jose, even though sometimes he was a pain. I get to say that because I did serve with him in the Latino Professional Association, and he was one of the co-founders of the Latino Professional Association and also the Latino Chamber of Commerce. And Dora as well, she was always nudging us to to come to Rotary. Sandy and I'm a little bit of the rebel child. So Sandy signed up right away, and I'm still trying to set it up. Anyway, so I also want to thank, there is multiple organizations reflected in these slides that have supported us through our journey. Downtown Madison, I gave Jason a lot of grief for a good year and a half. And then Charles has always been part of our support system, and Peter. And I probably forget to name people, but you all been part of the journey of Step Up, and supporting us and making sure that we keep on doing this work here in the community. So thank you. And these are just the people who we have been working with in the last 4 years.
We have time for one question.
Hi, I'm Linda O'Hearn. Great work. Thank you very much. How do you scale the costs, or how much does it cost for people to do these kinds of efforts in their businesses?
So the cost depends on the internal infrastructure of the organization. So one of the things that we, as my background earlier showed in finance and accounting, I serve organizations doing audits that were like small, like $1 million, with to multi-million-dollar multinational organizations. And so an audit is an audit, regardless of your 1 million or billions. And so it depends on what happens, but one of the things that we set out from the beginning as an organization was to support the mid-sized businesses, the small businesses that want to do D&I, that do not have D&I professionals internally. And the reason for that is that over 50% of the workforce is employed by small businesses and medium-sized businesses. And the vast majority of those mid and small-sized businesses employees are by far like the more people of color. And so we thought that making sure that our services and our offerings are priced in a way that support those businesses, almost like an outsourced part of their arm, like Artful Home, there is under 100 employees, and we are part of their organization. But what we also learned, which we did not plan to learn in the last 4 years, was that a lot of those organizations also lack other functional capacity to do the work. Because before you can apply an equity lens on your HR practices, you have to have HR practices. And so before you can apply an equity lens on marketing, you have to have a marketing team, right? And so the challenge is really a little bit bigger, and so we pace the work based on the capacity internally of the organizations. And so it varies. And we shape our offerings depending on the organizational capacity to pay and budget, because one of our goals was for this work to not be, that the reason that this work doesn't get done is because of lack of budget. But also hold people accountable of saying, I am committed to D&I, but then when you ask them what your budget is, and it's zero. It's like you can't say those two things in the same sentence. I guess with my financial background, I can run through the numbers myself and determine what is an appropriate amount of percentage of the budget that needs to be allocated. And then the second part to that is that we've worked with some marketing leaders where they're like, what is my D&I budget for marketing? And I'm like, it has to come from the one you already have. And so thinking about how those things work and not seeing the work that we're doing with D&I that's like any other business problems, you will run through your financing strategy in order to pay for the work that and the change that you want to see.
Thank you so much, Tania and Jeannine, for sharing that story, and we're meeting with Amy afterwards. So. Okay, thank you all for coming today. Enjoy, happy Labor Day weekend. Enjoy the blue moon. Brian Baskin was trying to get me to do a blooper, but I said that only happens once in a blue moon. So sorry, Brian. But so come next week, and we'll hear from Jerry Deshane, Executive Director of the League of Wisconsin Municipalities and the Urban Alliance, and the title of his presentation is Shared Revenue, the Art and Agony of Political Compromise. So it should be really interesting. But as we go forth, please stand, and we will recite the Rotary four-way test of the things we think, say, and do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? We are adjourned. See you next week.